So this is a question I've mentioned a couple of times on videos over the last month through the autumn as we've come towards the end of this year. But essentially, where does 2024 rank in the history of years for the Springboks? Because I think this team in many ways is in somewhat of a unique position. I'll go into it in the video. You can have your say in the comment section. If you're thinking about 2024 as a Springbok fan, just where does it rank in the years that you've witnessed? Let me know. Whilst you're here also, like the video, and if I earn your subscription, I would love it as well. Hit that subscribe button. So let me say right out from the gate here, obviously the World Cup years are better than 2024. 95, 2007, 2019, 2023. When you win the World Cup, those years are cemented in legend forever. And possibly you'd throw in some of the Lions years as well. 2009, possibly 2021, although because of COVID, that was all a bit weird anyway. But obviously winning a Lions series is massive as well. And like a World Cup, doesn't come around all that often. So if we're putting aside those years for just a second, is 2024 then right up there? Because my argument for it being one of the great years of the Springboks, other than years when they've won the World Cup, is I don't think I can remember a Springbok team being almost as dominant, as revered, never been perceived as being higher than I think they are now. Like off the back of last weekend when they beat Wales, there were conversations up here in the Northern Hemisphere of, is this the greatest rugby team ever? I've heard people say that previously, even after the last World Cup win, when they went back to back, of saying, is this one of the greatest rugby teams we've ever seen? And I think that says an awful lot about where this team are at the moment. And I will re-emphasise and reiterate, I know it's not a World Cup year. Those years are always going to be higher than this year. But they've only lost 2 games. They've won the Rugby Championship, and they won the Rugby Championship, I think, at a bit of a canter, really. They were clearly the best team in that competition. They've gone undefeated on their tour at the end of the year when they've come up to the Northern Hemisphere. Like, I think at the moment, they are undisputedly the best team in the world. And I think even in other years, like even in World Cup years sometimes, that has been disputed. And that's what I mean when I think, for me, this South Africa team are on a pedestal higher than any other nation, any other team in the world at the moment. I know Ireland are kind of just on their heels, and they obviously split that series in South Africa. But Ireland, I think, have dropped off a little bit since then. They haven't looked quite as convincing. And I just think where this Springbok team are, how good they are, is what makes this year, 2024, such a special year in many ways, even though it's not a World Cup year. Plus, and this is worth mentioning, they've done all of this whilst using 50 different players, was it? Rassie Erasmus has used this year. They've done it whilst planning for the future, but still winning now, which is basically impossible to do. Like, there are so few other teams that are able to do that. As an England fan, I would know, okay? Over the years, I've constantly heard that England are building for the future, then they might have a good Six Nations, or they might have a good World Cup here and there and get to a final or get to a semi-final and lose by a point, and then they'll drop off again. Whereas you feel with this South Africa team, they're constantly chopping and changing. New players are coming in. There's very few players that you expect to be there every single week, but they continue winning. Their ability to build for the future whilst winning now, I think, is arguably the most impressive thing about them, and one of the major reasons that I think this team should be respected, reason Rassie Erasmus and those coaches should be so well respected as well, which if you watch my video on the World Rugby Awards and Rassie not being the coach of the year, to me, it makes no sense. But award ceremonies often have us not really agreeing with the decisions. I think Rassie has been brilliant. I think what he does with this team, the way they rotate, and I know they've got a level of strength in depth that a lot of nations would be pretty envious about. But even so, the players coming in and it's all been awesome. So that is, for me, is why 2024, I think, as someone that's not a Springbok fan, not South African, I don't have a completely endless pit of knowledge about previous years of the Springboks, but kind of in my lifetime, in my rugby watching lifetime, it's one of the most impressive years I think they've had outside of a World Cup year. The World Cups are always going to be higher than anything else, possibly the Lions tours as well, as I mentioned. But just in terms of a team, in terms of them being the best in the world, almost that undisputed heavyweight champ, if you like, if we want to use a boxing analogy. They are that at the moment, I think. But let me know what you think of it. Comment down below, is 2024 one of the great years for the Springboks? Like the video as well, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.